Picture it, 1971. For a generation, the American dollar wasn't just money, it was gold, the absolute bedrock of the global economy. This system, born from the ashes of World War II, was called the Bretton Woods Agreement. It made a monumental two-part promise. Every major country would peg its currency to the US dollar, and the US dollar itself could be swapped for a fixed amount of physical gold. This turned the dollar into the world's reserve currency, fueling an unprecedented boom in global trade. But beneath this glittering surface, a time bomb was ticking. And here's the crucial detail. This golden promise was only for foreign governments. Regular Americans like you and me, we were locked out. By the late 1960s, the cracks were starting to show. The United States was bleeding money, bankrolling the costly Vietnam War, and wrestling with serious economic problems at home. In a normal, free-floating market, this kind of spending would have caused the dollar's value to drop, acting like a financial shock absorber. A weaker dollar would have made American exports cheaper, helping to boost the economy. But the Bretton Woods system was a cage. It locked the dollar's value in place, preventing this natural adjustment. And that is when the world's financial markets woke up to a terrifying reality. The US dollar they were all holding was massively overvalued. Suspicion quickly turned into strategy. Across Europe, nations realized they were holding on to inflated American promises on paper. France, in particular, decided to act. They began aggressively trading their vast dollar reserves back to the US Treasury. But they didn't want more paper. They demanded cold, hard, physical gold. This wasn't just a financial transaction. It was a coordinated raid on America's vaults. Every ton of gold shipped overseas was a chip hammered out of America's economic dominance. It was a clear signal that foreign nations trusted a heavy, cumbersome metal more than the world's reserve currency. The problem was, the US simply didn't have enough gold to back every dollar it had printed. The entire system was a fractional reserve system, meaning only a fraction of the gold needed to cover all the dollars actually sat in the vaults. If everyone panicked and demanded their gold at once, it would trigger a catastrophic global bank run, and the whole thing would come crashing down. The specter of total economic collapse, a ghost from the past, was now haunting the present. The world's financial heavyweights knew the rules of this dangerous game better than anyone. Families like the Rothschilds, the centuries-old banking dynasty, had understood this for generations. They had strategically invested in gold and silver mining operations way back in the late 1800s. They knew that when paper promises fail, gold is the ultimate store of value, the final bedrock. This wasn't a new scenario. Just 78 years earlier, during the Panic of 1893, the U.S. government's gold reserves ran dangerously low. President Grover Cleveland had to make a desperate call to the titan of finance, J. Pierpont Morgan. And who did Morgan have to turn to for a bailout? The very same House of Rothschild, securing 3.5 million ounces of gold to stabilize the U.S. currency. But now, in 1971, the crisis wasn't a foreign loan. It was an internal hemorrhage, and it was about to become fatal. In the sweltering heat of the summer of 1971, President Richard Nixon and a tight circle of advisors met in absolute secrecy at Camp David. The grim realization washed over them. They were trapped in an unwinnable financial war. They faced a brutal choice. Either let the system collapse as foreign nations drained America's gold reserves, or make a unilateral move to blow up the entire post-war financial order themselves. The clock was ticking. Nixon chose the preemptive strike. And then, on the evening of August 15, 1971, the hammer fell. In a televised address to the nation, President Nixon announced the immediate and unilateral suspension of the dollar's convertibility into gold. The Nixon shock, as it came to be known, severed the dollar's golden anchor. In that single moment, the dollar was transformed into what we call a fiat currency, backed by nothing but belief and the full faith and credit of the United States. The shock waves were instant and seismic. In the 5 years that followed, the price of gold, that ultimate store of value that financiers had coveted for centuries, more than tripled. Measured against that golden yardstick, the American dollar lost over 2/3 of its purchasing power. This decision didn't just float the dollar, it unleashed an economic hurricane. What followed were 2 decades of crippling, record-high inflation in the U.S., fueled by a toxic mix of low interest rates, ongoing war spending, and skyrocketing oil prices. The end of the gold standard, a drastic move forced by a fractional reserve system that could no longer keep its promise, created the world we live in today. A world where central banks wield immense power, forever changing the relationship between you, your money, and your government. The economic aftershocks of that one Sunday night announcement continue to shape our financial reality to this very day. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into financial history as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the systems that secretly run our world. See you in the next video.